Ah, the Middle Ages, a vast stretch of time from around 500 AD to 1500 AD. The mighty Roman Empire had crumbled and new kingdoms began to rise. Europe was a continent in transformation. Life back then was incredibly harsh. Brutal wars frequently scarred the lands, and hunger was a constant, unwelcome guest. Devastating diseases could sweep through towns. People craved safety, longed for order. This deep need for security shaped society. One dominant system that arose was feudalism. It revolved around land ownership and control. Loyalty formed the bedrock of this structure. Faith also held immense power, with the Christian church being a mighty institution. Feudalism was a system of promises and land. A lord granted land to a vassal who swore loyalty in return. This system brought order in a dangerous world. It started after Rome fell, as local strongmen needed soldiers to defend their lands. They offered land for military service, creating feudal ties. The feudal system had a clear hierarchy, like a pyramid. At the top sat the king, followed by powerful nobles, knights, and peasants. Each level owed something to the one above and offered protection to those below. Power was very local. Great lords controlled their own lands. Sometimes these lords became powerful enough to challenge the king. Life was often a patchwork of fiefdoms. This made for a complex political map. Feudalism was a practical solution for survival. It spread across much of Western Europe. At the peak of the feudal pyramid stood the king. In theory, he owned all the land. His main job was to protect his kingdom and provide justice. Below the king were the great lords, granted huge areas of land known as fiefs. They swore loyalty to the king, providing knights for royal wars. Lords governed their own territories, holding courts and collecting taxes. The relationship between kings and lords was key, often a delicate balancing act. Powerful lords could be rivals, leading to civil wars. Keeping the nobility loyal required a king to be both strong and clever. A vassal held land from a more powerful lord. This land was granted in a ceremony where the vassal swore an oath of fealty. The main duty of most vassals was military service. They had to fight when their lord called, often becoming knights. Vassals might also give advice and attend the lord's court. Knights were the armored warriors of this age, fighting on horseback. Becoming a knight took years of training, starting as a page, then a squire. Knights were expected to be brave and protect the weak. They followed a code known as chivalry, which spoke of courage, honor, and courtesy. Knights were to be loyal to their lord, defend the church, and protect ladies. This was the ideal, though not all knights lived up to it. Many were rough, violent men. Chivalry provided a set of standards. It shaped the image of the medieval warrior. The oath of fealty was sacred, and breaking it was a terrible disgrace. This system created chains of loyalty. Knights were a fearsome sight on the battlefield. At the very bottom of feudal society were the peasants. Most were serfs, not free men tied to the land. They belonged to the manor where they were born and could not leave without the lord's permission. Their lives were incredibly hard, filled with endless back-breaking labor. Serfs lived and worked on the lord's estate, called a manor. The manor had a village, fields and woods. Serfs farmed the land to survive, growing crops and raising animals. Their homes were simple huts, often made of wood and mud. Serfs had many obligations to their lord. Working on his land for free and paying rent, they paid fees to use the lord's mill, oven or wine press. Life was a constant struggle for them, with very few rights or freedoms. Despite their harsh lives, serfs were crucial to the system. Their labor fed everyone else, including knights, lords and clergy. Without the serfs, feudalism would collapse. They were the foundation of the entire system. Serfs were the unseen engine room, sustaining the whole medieval world. Their existence was tough but essential. The manor often had a manor house for the lord or a small castle. Serfs grew crops like wheat, barley and oats. They raised animals like pigs and chickens. The manor was a self-sufficient community. Faith touched everything in medieval Europe. The Christian church, especially the Catholic Church, was incredibly powerful. Its influence spread into every corner of life. People believed God was always watching and his judgment determined their fate. Daily life was structured around religious beliefs. The church bells marked the hours of the day and people attended Mass regularly. Sacraments like baptism and marriage were vital. Confession was important for cleansing sin. Religious festivals and saints' days provided breaks from hard work. The church taught people how to live, shaping behavior. It was a massive landowner and political force. Bishops and abbots were often great lords controlling vast estates and wealth. Monasteries were centers of learning and prayer. Churches and cathedrals dominated the landscape built to glorify God. Stained glass windows and art inside taught people about their faith. Feudalism and faith were deeply intertwined. The church often reinforced the feudal order, teaching that society's structure was God's will. Kings ruled by divine right, and lords and vassals had their God-given places. Serfs were told to accept their lot, maintaining social stability. Many church leaders were also feudal lords, holding large amounts of land. They had vassals who owed them service and collected rents and taxes. Feudal lords supported the church, giving land and money to build churches and endow monasteries. Going on crusade was a venture of both faith and feudal ambition. The Pope called for crusades, and kings led them. Feudalism provided the structure for government, while faith provided the moral and spiritual compass. Together, they created a unique world of castles and cathedrals, knights and monks, lords and serfs. This powerful combination eventually gave way, but it left a lasting